All right, Michelle, what are some of the highest leverage tasks you've seen? And I know you get this amazing view of all of these things kind of put together. And I'm hoping you can tell us what are the things that we're not doing that we should be from a delegation perspective.
Yeah, so some of the highest volume of tasks that I'm seeing are planning, are research, travel planning, and scheduling. Those are the three biggest things that I'm seeing, but I'm also seeing forward planning. So that's something I like to break down as seasonal planning. And as a parent, what I see is, like, for instance, it's April right now, so parents are planning for summer. You have summer vacation, you have summer break from school, kids are out, you have to plan for camps, you have to plan for fall. If kids are going to a new school, we support a lot of military families. So they're traveling from different duty stations, so they're looking at new schools. A lot of them are going to be looking into activities for their kids. So while the assistant is also supporting the client professionally, they're also supporting them on the personal side as well. So they're helping them keep a lot of that organized.
Yeah, that future planning, I feel like is something that people don't think they can outsource very effectively. And might be surprised to find out, I mean, how much research there is, especially in this case where you're moving around a lot or where you're traveling, or increasingly as people are sort of nomadic or working remote. Like, there's so much that goes into that, so many logistics.
I think a lot of the issue is most of us, myself included, will get in the mindset of, this is such an important task. This is something I personally really need to focus on for my family or for me personally. And I really just can't outsource that to anyone else. But if you have someone doing the groundwork for you, then you've effectively removed 50% of the choices that don't even apply to you. So you can really focus your time on the choices that do apply to you and your family.
How do you coach people through that? I imagine that's a lot of the job, especially on the client side, is like, even once you sell someone on, like, hey, I need an EA, like getting them to use it and trust someone else to contribute to their life.
I think it's all in the approach to working with an assistant. So with working with someone from Squared Away, it's really not just delegating to someone, it's really building an effective partnership, someone who is your right hand. They might not be in the same state as you or even the same country at some points, but really being able to say, oh my gosh, my life might feel like it's falling apart right now, but I can message my assistant and say, I need this by the end of the day. Please help me. And
Hmm.
you know it's going to happen, and you know that you're going to get someone who truly cares about you and your experience. You might not get that from another service, but our assistants, one of the things that is really important to us in building that relationship is you're building a relationship. This is someone that you want to get to know. They're not just a task on a to-do sheet.
Hmm.
They are someone that you really want to form a professional relationship with and be with long term, because you don't want a relationship where you dread going to work every day, you
Yeah.
dread receiving tasks from them every day, and you do want an effective partnership on both sides of the coin.
How long do you see the typical relationship between an assistant and a client?
The average relationships at Squared Away are around 18 months.
Oh, that's amazing. So you really do. It's not like you're getting rematched with somebody all the time, and it's not like you're throwing tasks into this kind of pool of people who are willing to help, but changing context all the time. Like, you work with the same person
Absolutely.
week after week, and okay, interesting. So how much? I imagine that's tough context switching on the assistant side to work with. You said they support up to 5 people.
Yeah, not everybody supports 5 clients, though. We
Okay.
have assistants who are supporting. I honestly think there's only a handful of assistants who support 5 clients, and they're at
Hmm.
very much varied plan levels.
Yeah.
But most of our assistants are supporting around 3.
Okay. And just kind of working like 5 to 10 hours a week for each one.
Yeah, it's I really wish I had a good average of our assistants in front of me, but it's so varied because our assistants, the minimum that they work with us is about 75 hours per month, which is very part-time. And
Hmm.
then we have assistants who work with us full-time. So it's very much varied within those 300 assistants.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So talk me through the like bringing a client on. Like, how does someone know when they're ready to be working with an EA?
That is a very good question.
That's what we do here. Good questions.
When you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, and just speaking from personal experience, I'm a mom, I have two boys. When you find yourself thinking about work more than your family in the evening, when you find your boundaries, which I firmly believe in having family and personal boundaries between work and family, when you find yourself thinking about work when you should be thinking about your family, when you find yourself feeling frazzled and overwhelmed, you need support. As much as everybody wants to be Wonder Woman and Batman, not everybody can do it by themselves. It took me such a long time to realize, as much as I wanted to do everything myself, I couldn't. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But once you do, it's so amazing. Even if you want to give away 5 hours of tasks per month, even if it's just saying, here, reorder my last Instacart every single week for me and help me do that. It's so empowering just to be able to say, you know what? I have this time back and now I can focus on something that is more appealing for me.
Yeah, I imagine that's a very interesting, like something that I like about Squared Away is the ability to start small. You know,
Yes.
it's an intimidating thing to start working with an EA. You're not sure how to start, and you're not sure what to, how to build trust, what tasks to give first. If you're going to be any good at delegating at all, like it is a skill that both sides have to build. Even if you're working with an experienced assistant, you need, like on the client side, I had to learn how to do this and what things I could delegate and how to be a good delegator in the first place. So that ability to kind of start small. I mean, do you see that often? Is that the journey that people kind of start with 5 hours a month and then go to 20 and then go to 50? Like,
Yes.
okay.
I tell people all the time, if you have no idea where to start, please start small. It is such a journey and a learned experience. Being a delegator is a learned skill, and it's not something that everybody comes equipped with right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Being able to delegate doesn't mean you are fully equipped to give away an entire task. It might just be one piece of one part of a task. So, and I had this conversation with a client a few months ago because he was feeling like, oh, I don't feel like I can give anything away. And I was like, you don't have to give the whole task away, just give a piece of it, because that one piece is going to help you complete the entire pie. So if you look at it in blocks, then eventually you're going to complete the house, kind of deal. And I love analogies, so I apologize in advance.
Me too. Well, yeah.
But starting small is going to give you the least amount of risk, and it's going to give you the most bang for your buck, in all honesty. You're not going to waste time or money.
What do you see as the behaviors that what you would call a good delegator has? Like, how do you know a client is going to be a great to work with for an assistant and as successful at using Squared Away versus somebody who's like, oh, this is going to be trouble?
Communication, a great communicator. And by great communicator, I don't mean, being able to make every call all the time. I mean, someone who is just very consistent in saying, you know what, I'm putting a call with you for 15 minutes on my calendar every single week just to brain dump what is living in my brain and what is stressing me out at night. That's a good communicator. Hey, Michelle, I've got to tell you, this is what kept me up last night. Here's all my tasks. Help me prioritize them. That's a good communicator because, number one, you're letting me know what's happening in your life and what I can take off of your plate. And then I can help you prioritize that moving forward. And being consistent with those meetings or each week or those calls every week means that you're a good communicator with me and we can work up from there.
Okay. Let's talk about like the peak delegators. Like who are the very best? What are they delegating? What are some of the most complex tasks that assistants are taking on?
Oh my goodness. We have clients who are going through fundraising rounds and who
As founders.
definitely as
Yeah.
founders,
Okay.
and they need support from their assistants to keep them organized because they're doing another full-time job on top of their
Hmm.
full-time job. And they need someone to help keep the documents organized. They need meetings done instantaneously almost. They need LinkedIn's pulled, the whole nine. So all that goes into a fundraising round, they need that support on the back end. So our assistants are assisting in those. That's the
And
most
that,
complex I've seen.
yeah, and that is a very high trust
Yes,
environment.
it very much is.
Yeah. I mean, you've got private data, you've got schmancy people, you've got fast moving environments, and you do not want to go into a meeting with the wrong prep or, the wrong numbers or, yeah, every digit counts when you're sending that paperwork around.
Absolutely. It's incredibly high stress for the client. It's incredibly high stress for the assistant doing the support, and everybody just has to come together and breathe during that process. So I think that's the most complex and intricate one I've seen our assistants work on.
Okay. And that is, I mean, it goes with the variety of clients that you have. What else, what are the other things that come to mind, like process wise? I mean, on the personal side of things, like, do you see, who are the clients that you see with like the most hours or the most support from their assistant? Like, how far does that go?
Oh my goodness. We have so many different arenas that we're supporting. I'm trying to think who I could pick on at the moment. That's a really good question. I might have to come back to that one.
Okay.
We, I can speak to delegation. We have some really good delegation tools that our assistants are working with. So a lot of our
Mm,
clients will work with Asana, scheduled tasks, deadlines, that kind of thing. Those are the top tier delegators that I've seen who
they
will have
have a project management tool already that they
they
kind of
have a
use. Mm,
yep, they have a project management tool. They have feedback that they're ready to give their assistant. They have that scheduled call where they'll go through the task list together and
yeah.
then they'll give feedback on task. And I would say those are the master delegators that I see. And quite a few clients will come equipped with that when they're
Hmm.
ready to get started. But then we'll also get the ones that are like, oh my gosh, I have no idea where to get started. Can you please just fix my life right now? Um, and then that's when we'll suggest and recommend tools to get started with.
And you like teach them to use Asana on the client side. And you're like, here's what the best people do. Why don't you
Hmm.
get organized this way? Okay.
Yep. And then some clients will also say, I'm not tech savvy. Can we use like Google
Mm,
Docs and
yeah.
just collaborate in Google Docs together?
Sure.
So a lot of it is preference, like what's going to
Mm,
work best for you. And I'll pick on myself and my husband. I love Asana. My husband cannot figure it out for his life at the moment. That's why we personally use Trello as a
okay.
family. So it's to each their own.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how often does that burden fall on like the assistants? Like, do the squared away assistants come in with like a background in this and knowing that they're going to have to kind of train their client to use them, or is that something that like you take on as squared away and be like, you do not have to have this experience. We will sort of forge the connection between you and make sure that this is a smooth partnership.
So that's kind of something that we teach our assistants.
Okay.
It's part of being proactive at Squared Away. So
Hmm.
through training, we will teach our assistants. A lot of times, your clients won't know how to delegate. They won't know how to stay organized. Offering them different platforms, different ways to stay organized. You can offer them, ask them their preferences. What do they like to see? Do they like end of day breakdowns? Do they like Google Docs? Do they like phone calls? Do they prefer Zooms? It's all in that first phone call with your client, where it's basically an interview of them saying, okay, this is me getting to know you. This is our professional dating moment, and I'm going to get to know you. And now I'm going to work with you moving forward and see what's going to be best in supporting you.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I mean,
totally not PC, but it's definitely like professional dating.
It is an apt analogy, and as you say, if you're the master of analogies, that is a good one that we can all relate to. I've enjoyed some of the blog posts that you guys have written too about how to become a better delegator and separating good from bad. And it talks about some of the same things that I talk about in building more and more personal leverage. There's a clip from, I can't remember the name of the post. I think it's how to become a master delegator. Is that right? Yeah. How to become a badass delegator. Even better title. But the quote is, it's not whether or not you can complete the task on your own, but to ask yourself, what's the return on investment by doing so? And I was like, that's so like just training people, which is, I had to do myself. And it sounds like you did too. Like, pull out the I can do it from the is it the most important thing to do? Yeah. And learn to, and just because it needs to be done doesn't mean you have to do it. And yeah, telling yourself over and over again, like, is this the highest and best use of my time? Who else can do this work other than me? Like, which is so hard for, I bring the Midwestern work ethic of whatever it is, I can do it. I can fit it into today. I can fit it into tomorrow. Like, I'll get everything done. And it's just so much more rewarding. It's so much more relaxing to know that you have some help and have somebody else bringing you along. And when you realize you're creating a job for somebody who needs one and loves doing it, it's not like you're just making work for other people to do for free and asking for favors all the time. Like, people want to help you and you want to be helped. And if you can afford to pay them for their help, it is a wonderful mutual win-win that we should all be excited about.
Absolutely. And it's so funny that you say that, because we had a manager call internally last week, and one of our team managers, she was talking about how awesome it was to have her husband come home from flying. He's a pilot in the Navy. And she was like, it was so cool to be able to say, hey, guess what I helped my client with today? And how badass is that? By the way, that's way cooler than you going flying today. I'm sorry. But it's amazing that we're able to do that, because, 10 years ago when I met my husband and we got married, that just was unheard of for military spouses to be able to work remotely in that capacity. So we've kind of changed that narrative a little bit.
Absolutely. I in doing my research, I found that I think it was on your site, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but that military spouse unemployment is at 38%.
38%. Yes.
That is insane.
I agree. It is.
That's so brutal. And you said 24% pre-COVID, which you would think the equalization of remote work would make it easier to kind of close that gap. But that is unbelievable. And yeah, I mean, the fact that this company and everybody who's a customer of it is helping to kind of eliminate that is hugely meaningful.
100%. And it just, to kind of put it a little bit in perspective and share a little bit more, the unemployment rate during the Great Depression as a country was 24%.
Oh,
that hits
extremely rough. Oh,
so,
did you struggle with this before starting Squared Away? Like, is that what drove the creation of the company?
I it played into it a lot.
Yeah.
I married my husband in 2013 and we were in North Carolina, which is where I'm from.
Okay.
So I felt like I had a leg up. I knew the area. I was in a great setup for the most part for
Hmm.
being able to find a job. And nobody wanted to hire me. I went on probably 30 interviews. They would all go great until I got the question, what brings you to Jacksonville, North Carolina? If you're from the area, I guarantee it's not the scenery. And my husband's a pilot at New River. Oh, that's cool. And it would instantly do a 180 and I wouldn't hear back. And it wasn't like I wasn't qualified for the positions either. Like I
Yeah.
had a really great resume and I was qualified to answer phones at a law firm. So not hearing back didn't make sense to me. And then once I started learning a little bit more about the military spouse community, it was very obvious that it was because I was a spouse and I was only there temporarily.
The concern is that they hire you and you get forced to move away in 6 to 12 to 18 months and they're back where they started.
100%. They
Okay.
wanted someone long term.
Yeah. Brutal. And yeah, I mean, the rise of remote work hopefully helps that massively. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So it's a perfect position. So when did Squared Away become a real, a company and a mission for you?
So Squared Away came a few years later. I was extremely fortunate and I started working with Zirtual in
Hmm.
2013. So remote before remote was cool,
Yeah.
essentially.
Hipster remote.
And yes. And I worked with them for about 2 years, made it to a manager position. And I was there when the bottom fell out in August of 2015.
Yeah.
And that's when my sad country song story starts. Um, I was 3 months pregnant with my first little boy, and my husband had deployed 3 weeks previously
Oh,
for 6 months. So it really is a sad country song.
yeah.
So that's when I was like, I really have this opportunity to take my clients and continue to work with them. And they agreed to do so. And we had that option. So I kind of took that opportunity and ran with it and worked up until my husband says I put up my out of office email when they were putting in the epidural kind of deal. Um, he might not be wrong. um, I took a grand total of 2 weeks off to become a new mom.
Oh my
Don't
God.
recommend, do
No.
not recommend at all to those who are listening. And then I worked remotely with my clients, and it was hard. It was extremely hard. It was just me.
Yeah.
That's the reason I took 2 weeks off was because it was just me. And a few months later, my husband came home and said, "Hey, we're moving to Hawaii. Thanks, Marine Corps." Most people would be excited. I had a moment.
Yeah.
We were on the East Coast, and my business at that point had 13 clients, and it was just me. All were East Coast based,
Wow.
so a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of made up my mind that I wasn't going to let time zones beat me. So that wasn't going to happen. So I tell my clients I was taking a week off to move. I did not tell them where because I did not want to terrify them.
Yeah.
And I moved to Hawaii and started waking up at 3 a.m. Sponsored
Wow.
by coffee, 100%.
They have great coffee in Hawaii.
They
So
do.
that,
It's phenomenal.
yeah.
Shout out to Kona.
Yeah.
Um, and I worked from 3 to 11 every day, Hawaii time.
Wow.
And that's when, after about 6 months, that's when the idea for Squared Away was born.
And how did it turn from you doing octopus work from the middle of the night and like servicing 13 clients by yourself to I don't know, would you think of it as an agency today or a company? Like, I guess I don't know how you classify, but turn into a like, okay, no, I'm going to grow the team. I'm going to match with other people. I'm going to build a real business out of this, not just a solo shop.
So my co-founder, Shane, called me one day. I believe he was at South by Southwest. And he said to me, he goes, "You need to scale because I'm scaling." And I was like, yeah, I have a 1-year-old, Shane. Call me later. I don't know if this is a good idea. And then he called me back later and we had a conversation about it. And he was like, "No, this is great. You're a good assistant. You could scale and, do more kind of deal." And I said, "Well, let me think about it." And I had friends who had asked me for a few years at that point, like, "How can you work from home? This is something that I would love to do. How do you get into that?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was a good idea for them to get into that at that point.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So I called him back and I said, "If we're going to do this, we're going to do it with military spouses in mind. That's going to be the focus." And that was March of 2017.
Whoa, that's awesome. So Shane had been a client of yours for the run up for the past few years or past few months ago.
Yeah.
So that was how you guys got to know each other. And yeah, and you scaled together.
We scaled together. He's been an amazing mentor for sure.
Yeah. I mean, to me too, this is Shane Mack that we're talking about, who is also a previous episode on this podcast. And who I've learned a lot from in business and life, and more particularly in crypto. We spend most of that episode talking about crypto and not enough talking about Squared Away. So we're here to balance the scales and talk about more of this. So, but I know that has been a key piece of Shane's life and how he's managed to be an investor and a founder and a country music star all at the same time, which is a unique life. So yeah, that's
very much so.
Remarkable. What was sort of the like division of labor in the beginning of the company? How did you guys work together, and what was the 0 to 1 moment, or 1 employee to 10 employees?
So in the beginning, it was more Shane was helping me kind of drive the idea for bringing on clients, like supporting military spouses kind of deal.
Yeah.
That's how we got from like 1 to 10. It took us about a year to get from 1 to 10. But then when we officially launched in November of 2017, there was only 2 employees. It was just me and Kelsey, our director of operations now.
Wow.
So at that point I think we had about 8 clients, if I'm not mistaken, in 2017. So it took us about a year to bring on 10 employees.
And then just keep, you add a new client, add a new assistant, two new clients,
it was very
2 new
much,
assistants. Yeah. Try to keep everything balanced.
It was very much a teeter-totter effect.
Yeah. When you're panicked about one thing, the other one's fine. And then.
Exactly. It was very much like, okay, we're going to panic over here. Now it's time to go panic over here.
Yes.
So that playbook of the first year, I don't know that I could write it effectively for what it's worth.
Got it. Super interesting. And one of the other interesting things that is unique about Squared Away, just looking at the homepage, is that it's really focused, at least on the client side, on being a company perk, which is, I've looked at a lot of EA companies and I have not seen anybody else really hit as hard as you guys do on really selling to whole companies or whole executive teams all at the same time. And this is a drum that Shane has beat for a long time that I think is really wonderful. It's such a great perk to give people parts of their life back and help them unlock, valuable hours to spend with their family, or stop thinking about work when they should be thinking about family, to, reference your boundaries again, because that is just so, so important. And I'm curious, like, where that came from and how it came about and how it's maybe unfolded for you.
Yeah. So Shane actually implemented this when he was CEO of Assist, and I was actually the company perk because I was the assistant that was supporting Assist when his team was growing. Um, but when that was implemented, everybody had such a great response. It was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like one of his team members had me book a Disneyland trip for her and her kids and book doctor's appointments and things like that so she could focus on sales and that kind of thing. So it was really great. There was a wonderful response from the Assist team when that was implemented. So coming from the backside of that and actually working on it, the team responded really, really well to that.
That's fantastic. I mean, I remember Shane talking about how impactful that was for recruits and everything. It's just in an era of like ping pong tables and stuff, it is just so much more employee focused and employee friendly.
It was really cool to watch, in all honesty, because when people were onboarding at Assist, they had an onboarding process, and then part of the onboarding process was they got to chat with me and learn about how I could support them. And it was really just cool to meet everybody and say, hey, here's all the cool things that I can do for you that is not work related. So it was really neat.
Yeah. What do you still use that menu of options or procedures or things you can offer?
Yeah, it's actually part of our delegation guide that we share with all of our new clients at Squared Away.
Cool.
It's been built into that. So a lot of Shane and my collaboration has been built into Squared Away in that regard. It's been really cool to watch.
Is that public anywhere? Or that's just for clients?
It's shared with our clients. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Keep your secrets.
Secret sauce.
That is your secret sauce. So looking back at, I mean, from you literally being the first, the company perk to now 300 assistants all over the world, which was the hardest chapter of company growth? Maybe the biggest step.
The learning that I didn't have to do everything myself. The teaching myself what I taught other people to do all the time. That was the hardest piece, I think.
Yeah, changing all your instincts.
It was very much, and this was something that Shane and I chatted about a lot, but it was changing my narrative and changing my mindset because I was going from the doer to being the CEO, and now I had to teach as opposed to do.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard shift internally, but I'm such a doer anyway. I'm very type A. Got to do it myself. I guess what made me a really good EA or VA. But now teaching others to do that now and having those same instincts has been really, really rewarding, especially to watch our own assistants grow into their roles. Yeah,
and it's so hard to teach something you haven't done. So to have to like force yourself to go through that metamorphosis in order to bring others along and teach them to do the same thing on the client side, probably especially, but internally, I'm sure, creating more leaders and more assistants. How has the job of CEO changed as you've grown? I mean, you went from a small company to quite a big one now, and I imagine your day to day is quite different.
It is. I've given a lot of my role previously away, which I'm told or I have learned is what you're supposed to do.
It doesn't make it easy, though. Yeah.
It does not make it easy whatsoever. Client calls, I'm not doing a lot of client sales calls, that kind of thing. A lot of what I had been doing all along has been given away to other Squared Away leaders who are growing beautifully in their roles. It's hard to, watch my babies grow and essentially leave the nest, so to speak. But it's also extremely rewarding to see them doing so well. So
Yeah. That's
I don't
fantastic.
know. It's hard to formulate that into words because something that I've worked on for essentially 20 hours a day for almost 5 years is doing really, really well internally. And it's like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Like,
Yeah.
I haven't taken a lunch break in 4.5 years. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah, it's like letting the I'll struggle for the analogy, but yeah, letting a kid grow up and realizing you don't have to hold it every single minute of every day when it can walk and go to school and drive itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That is it. It's like empty nester without being an empty nester.
And I mean, 4.5 years is really fast for the company to grow that big and to change, so much of your role and your instincts and your identity. Like that is a hard way to have to do that so quickly. It's not even like you have time to adjust in between. Your
Yes.
role probably changes massively every year, probably.
Oh, 100%. We definitely have, but I can honestly say that all of the changes that we've made have been nothing but for the good of our assistants and for our clients. So
Yeah.
we are extremely proud of everything.
Yeah. Can you put Squared Away maybe in context of some of the other offerings that are out there? I don't know how much you know about similar companies in the space or similar offerings, but how do you see yourself sort of fitting into all the other options, from all the way from hiring a full-time like high dollar EA down to like working with somebody through one of the marketplaces like Upwork or something like that?
Somebody asked me that, something similar, and I honestly don't know that we fit in the mold of any of them. We are a virtual assistant service, but we are also not independent contractors. All of our assistants are W-2 employees.
Mhm.
And we do offer professional development. We offer mental health days for our team every year, 401k, the whole nine. We pay more than any other EA service that's remotely in the world. We have such a great pool of resources internally for military spouses, and even outside of Squared Away, we have an amazing pool of resources for military spouses. I honestly don't know what arena we fall in right now, but I would say somewhere in the middle of being a full-time internal hire and maybe above, like boldly belay virtual.
Okay. Yeah, your packages go, or offerings, I guess, like all the way from 5 hours a month up to 75. So
Hmm.
it's not quite a like, hey, this is a substitute for hiring someone full time.
Right.
But you also pair them for the long run. So it's way different than like, relying on Fiverr or something, which you can't really do some of these like high trust email and scheduling tasks without
Yeah.
really that context and training.
And I think an important piece too is like having an independent contractor versus an actual employee. Like
Hmm.
you don't really have that, I don't want to say control, but that like understanding and that trust piece
Yeah,
of
that
of a contractor versus employee
yeah, it's an extra piece of accountability.
and security.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. So something that when we going back to like the most common things and the high leverage stuff that you see delegated, the scheduling, the research, the travel, the planning, those are kind of like, those are basically typical, common kind of EA jobs. And I feel like a lot of people maybe underestimate how much time goes into those, because they're not super hard, but they are personal preference driven, and they get nervous about outsourcing them, but at the same time massively underestimate the amount of time they spend on it. And I wonder maybe about some of the stories or experiences you get with people who have taken this step for the first time. And like, is there a tipping point that you see after a client has been like, I don't know if it's 1 month in or 6 months in, where they're kind of like, I had no idea how much this would change my life. Or if they're really kind of like, oh no, they take care of my scheduling and book some travel, and like, that's cool, but it's not cool, but not like life changing.
So we hear from our clients pretty regularly after 2 weeks or a month saying, "Oh my gosh, my assistant has been amazing. I had no idea how much I needed support. She's already done
Mm,
X, Y, and Z and thought about blank." So I regularly get almost that templated response from every client.
okay.
It's pretty awesome. Um, but one thing that I will challenge people to do is, those tasks that a lot of people say, "Oh, it'll take 30 minutes to look into researching X, Y, and Z," kind of deal. I would challenge people to look at it yourself, like track your own time doing a similar task or doing that task yourself on your phone or on your computer or whatever. Just track it yourself and see how much long it takes you to do it.
Just like start your time, your stopwatch
Just,
or whatever. Yeah.
just do a stopwatch, do a timer, and then just track it and then say, what could I have done for X, Y, and Z amount of time if I'd have given that away?
Mm,
And another thing too is like with inbox management, track yourself one day checking your email. Every single time you check your email, track how much time you spend it in one day, spend checking your email one day. And add it all up and say, holy cow, I spent 4 hours in my email today. I could have given this to an assistant and saved myself 4 hours.
yeah.
And then
Is,
track
is
it
there
over a week.
is there a tool for tracking that? Like,
Yeah, we use Harvest internally, and they have a
mm,
free platform that you can download if you
oh,
ever
cool.
get curious or ever want to consider where all of your time is going.
Oh God, I don't know if I want to. I do want to know, but I'm afraid of the knowledge. Yeah.
I challenged my husband to do it while he was deployed. He just got home about a month ago, and he was like, "Oh my Lord, I checked my email for 9 hours one week." Like, you know where to go for that, right? So, but it's really interesting, when people say, "Oh, well, it doesn't take me that long." Well, track your own time and
Yeah.
see where your time is going, and
Yeah.
then where you can delegate.
It's one of those things that, like, if you had to guess whether you're underestimating it or overestimating it, like, no one is underestimating it, like, or no one's overestimating it. Everyone is
Nobody's
spending more time
overestimating.
on this stuff than they think they are, and would benefit more from help than they think. That it's been my experience for sure. So one other comparison. I mean, the other sort of I feel like option people have when searching for an EA is whether they go, I mean, domestic or abroad, for lack of a better term. Like, do
Hmm.
they use someone who is maybe culturally or natively American wherever they are in the world versus somebody who's in maybe the Philippines or India? Do you see a lot of people kind of struggling with that decision, and how do you decide, like, what's the correct decision for them?
Yeah, I've definitely seen people kind of look at those options. It's definitely cheaper, not even gonna lie, to
Yeah.
find someone abroad. The really cool thing about working with Squared Away is being a team of military spouses.
Hmm.
Let me just tell you about military spouses. We are resourceful beyond resourceful. Um, Internally, we have, like I said, almost 300 assistants. We very much operate in a beehive mentality
Mm.
internally. So if somebody doesn't have an answer after Google XYZ, they're coming internally saying, "Oh my gosh, Eric just asked me to find this green rhinestone shirt. I cannot find it. Can somebody point me in the right direction?" If nobody has an answer, we have military spouse groups in pretty much every state on
Mm.
Facebook, Instagram, you name it. We're going to our groups. I can pretty much guarantee it and saying, "Hey, can somebody find me this shirt?" I guarantee you there's a spouse somewhere in this world that will be able to find this green rhinestone shirt. So that sisterhood, brotherhood of being a military spouse, that helpfulness, that tenacity and grit is
Hmm.
by far unmatched in our community, and it's really
Yeah.
cool to see. To this day, I still do that myself.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's nice to know that like the assistants have their own sort of social group and support system and network, and it's not like you're just getting the help of one person, but this whole sort of network of people who are all supporting each other, which is another perk for certainly the clients, but also the assistants, I think, of working with Squared Away, and the benefits of the whole team.
Oh, 100%. That's one of the things that we talk about internally all the time. One person doesn't always have the answer. The assistant doesn't always have to have the answer, but we will find it together. And it's absolutely okay to say, I don't know, but I promise you, we will find you an answer together.
I love it. So one more quote, maybe as we wrap up, from another one of your amazing blog posts that I thought was helpful, like good thinking and good to like put share the onus between the assistant and the client is: successful delegators act as quarterbacks, throwing a task to the delegatee with a touchdown in mind. When a lousy pass is thrown, it ends up causing strife for the entire team. Did you write that, you master of analogies?
I did not actually. I think credit for that one goes to Kelsey.
Okay.
She is also mistress of analogies. So shout out to her.
Yeah, I thought that was excellent. And back to our, where we started with, like, delegation is a skill, and being a great assistant is a skill, but so is being a great client, and continuously learning to over communicate and delegate good tasks and delegate as much as you can, trust and lean on your team to support you. I think all of that is a very, very helpful component, and helpful for those of us thinking about either working with an EA for the first time or expanding or hiring. I actually imagine a lot of how often do you notice that working with Squared Away is the first time that a client has managed someone directly or hired someone, full or part-time to help sort of grow their business?
I would say about 25% of the time.
Okay.
Clients have never worked with an assistant before. So it's a new relationship for them, and we're kind of teaching them the ropes along the way.
Yeah. Do you like doing that?
I do, actually. It's really fun because, I love clients who come in and say, this is how I like to work. We can absolutely work with that. But it's really cool being able to teach someone to be less stressed and how they can de-stress themselves in their entire lives. Very simply, just by communicating with their assistant and saying, hey, for 15 minutes every week. And it's really cool to kind of watch that blossom.
I love that. Okay, where would you send people to learn more about Squared Away and about you, and to take a next step if they feel like they're ready for that?
If people are ready to get started with us, they should email info@gosquaredaway.com, and we will get them squared away, all the pun intended. And if they want to learn more, they can check out gosquaredaway.com.
Cool. And you have a great posts on your personal medium about delegation. Even if you work with someone totally different, or you're just thinking about doing it for the first time, the Squared Away publication and blog are great. Also, anything else you want people to know? Any final words you'd share?
Even if you're curious about Squared Away, don't have to get started. Please feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer any questions anytime.
Cool. Low commitment, right? It's not like you got to sign up forever. And
oh no, absolutely not.
Cool. Okay, give it a try. Thank you so much for teaching us everything that there is to know about delegation, and how we can be less stressed, and we can help solve military spouse and underemployment. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm so excited to see what Squared Away has done, and appreciate you taking the time to teach us all.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to join you and chat, and I hope to join you again sometime in the future.
Love it.